title of this video is The Future of Universities, although, and it pains me to say so, I'll be asking, do universities have a future? Is their life still in the university model? And my answer, a la Star Trek, is life? Yes, Jim, but not as we know it. I'll start with another question. What are universities for? Because education has never been about developing knowledge in individuals. Education systems, particularly those state-run, have at every level always been about social engineering. The form and functionality of education are continuously and spontaneously changing. Properties always emerge that defy any attempt at a controllable design or even redesign. This dynamism results in education having consequences that often confound any original intention. It's worse. A wide range of mutually contradicting ideologies clamour to interfere with the existing educational systems, not least the dominant political leanings of the teaching staff. Hence the criticism that children are being brainwashed. Nothing new here, but it's no longer only the government doing the brainwashing. The consequences often turn out to be detrimental to social cohesion, spilling over into various aspects of society, in particular interfering with the effective running of the economy. There have always been hidden agendas in all educational so-called reforms. We need only look back to what was happening in the various German states at the turn of the 19th century. Our heroes here, Wilhelm von Humboldt and Johann Gottlieb Fichte, set down an education system, in particular founding the University of Berlin in 1810, that was run by the state and paid for by the state. Their agenda was to prepare the ground for a German national consciousness. Fichte preached that young impressionable minds should be convinced of the virtues of nationhood. The elite of German-speaking youth rushed to Berlin for their education. These young men, destined to be the future leaders and civil servants of the then fragmented Germany, were taught the virtue of a united country, having already been taken away parental influence, which could be contradictory, to be softened up by the state-inspired secondary education system, modelled along the sinister lines that were advocated by the controlling Fichte. I can't believe this quote. Education should aim at destroying free will, so that after pupils are thus schooled, they will be incapable throughout the rest of their lives of thinking or acting otherwise than as their schoolmasters would have wished. And he, of course, would control the schoolmasters. Amazing. Well, those who are bent on the ideal herd must first contrive the ideal herd animal. Now, most universities across Germany soon followed Berlin. Even then, it took 2 whole generations finally to deliver unification. This brainwashing by the primary and secondary school system and by the perversion of the tertiary education system proved so successful that the model was eagerly copied globally. It now forms the basis of state-run school and university systems in countries all around the world. However, this old model no longer wields its wished-for governmental mind control. For 3 reasons. First, the state-run education system is degenerating, and its quality, veracity, and independence are being questioned. Despite teaching being the major source of funding for universities, it is not prioritized by academics. The status and promotion of staff is based on the publication of research. Success here is even rewarded with a reduction in the teaching load. The pejorative word load says it all about the attitude of staff towards teaching. As for that research, funding by government skews results to deliver whatever government wants. Research the opposite, and government funding is no longer forthcoming. Just another reason why society has lost its faith in experts. They no longer believe experts. Secondly, industry is complaining that graduates are unsuitable for dealing with the cut and thrust of modern business. In general, they are suitable only for filling middle-ranking positions in the civil service or in the many non-productive, or rather should that be counterproductive, navel-gazing bureaucracies that are emerging in the woke social justice arena. It's hardly surprising that a growing number of companies no longer require university degrees for entry into management. Thirdly, the state now has powerful private competition enabled by new technology. Officialdom, the state, the education system it controls, and a compliant mainstream media no longer has a monopoly over influence. Large companies themselves are setting up their own universities with agendas far more in line with company policies. Private business schools are popping up everywhere. The strategy of using the school system to spread nationalism has degenerated into pandering to the general public, whose support is required by democratic politicians. In Britain, for example, the elitist grammar school system that espoused the highest intellectual standards has been systematically dismantled. It has been replaced by a far more egalitarian, comprehensive education that downplays failure because of the distress it causes to weaker children and their families. However, in the information age, wealth creation, which comes from commercial success, requires delivery of the very best talented and trained minds, not of a mediocrity with aspirations far outpacing its abilities. The economic consequences of an agenda that prioritizes the majority over an elite are yet to be seen, but it is easy to see why companies want input into school and university curricula. Meanwhile, online lessons at primary, secondary and tertiary levels are far more professional and far superior to those being delivered face to face. School teaching is going to degenerate into mere child-minding and the herding of children before online lessons. As for UK universities, since the Teaching and Higher Education Act enacted on the 16th of July 1998, tertiary education is no longer free, and the students are revolting at having to contribute and are pointing out the poor quality of teaching that they are now paying for. They are not getting value for their money. Whatever the validity of the student's case, the simple fact is that they have little public support because of the way they have managed their demonstrations against payment over the years. Of course, most of the demonstrations were well behaved, and there were some reports of heavy-handed policing. But no one listened. The mass media found far more mileage reporting a police horse being attacked with a metal pole, or paint bombs being thrown over the Prince of Wales's car, or some idiot clambering up the nation's premier war memorial, or a small group of European anarchists here to cause trouble, or students who were worse for wear, be it on drink or drugs, being interviewed on primetime TV news. But it's all irrelevant. The demonstrators failed to see that their actions were futile. The fact is, the delivery of mass higher education in the UK is very expensive, indeed far too expensive, far too costly, and the state could not keep on subsidising it. With the stated goal of sending half its young people to university, many of them studying courses of little vocational value, there simply isn't enough government money to pay for it all. For the past few decades, year on year, the money they pay to universities has fallen behind inflation. It's death of a thousand cuts. The crunch has to come, and student protests won't change a thing. The system is broke. The students themselves or their families are the only revenue stream that's large enough to fill the hole in the funding. Putting it simply, the old model of delivering teaching in universities has changed little since Socrates. However, what has changed is that the Socratic method, cooperative, argumentative dialogue to stimulate critical thinking, has in many disciplines been replaced with ideological orthodoxy and calls to deplatform all opposing schools of thought. Once again, Socrates is being executed for corrupting the youth of Athens. University could still take young people away from home with all the extra costs, collecting them together on expensive real estate, teaching them in relatively small groups within a system overburdened by a large bureaucracy. This is no longer economically viable. Even belated attempts to introduce the factory metaphor with relatively large classes haven't been sufficient to deliver the necessary economies of scale, and at a price of yet more student dissatisfaction. There is only one answer: distance learning delivered over the internet. Rather than complying with this present system, which will inevitably force students into debt, in many cases in excess of £50,000, the students can live at home, they can study online, and subsist on part-time employment. Students themselves are asking, why study at a third-rate Mickey Mouse university at an annual cost of tens of thousands of pounds when it is far cheaper to follow online courses from a high-status, globally branded university? And students expect to pay far less for this service. I predict that within a couple of decades, higher education will consist of relatively few global brands, eHarvard, eCambridge, etc., and some private new kids on the block yet to emerge. They're all competing on price, but with very high standards. These are already experimenting with prototype e-degrees. To students and to prospective employers, a degree will be measured in terms of a currency, which has to be hard earned for it to maintain its value. So I expect e-degrees will be of a far higher standard than those grade-inflated certificates presently being awarded by earthbound universities. And teaching will become far more important. The very best teachers will be stars, traded like football players of today. The best presenters could even develop their own courses that would be taught, they'd be bought in by the colleges. Presentations by the world's top businessmen, Musk, Bezos, Brin, Buffett, Gates, Soros, Zuckerberg, etc., will all be part of the curricula of e-business schools. Students will pick and mix courses from among those given by collaborating premier colleges. The present tranche of university academics, poor souls, will be reduced to tutorial support and exam marking. A few universities will survive on the income from high quality, commercially relevant research, but not many. As for the very important social side of university student life, that will be achieved by online social networks and with membership limited to the registered student body. The large numbers enrolled on any one course means that in any one geographical area, students will find numerous classmates and they can arrange to meet up at social events or work groups. And this has the benefit of introducing choice into the equation. In this pull rather than push environment, ideologues can no longer intimidate and hijack the student body like they do at present. They are left preaching to an ever-decreasing choir. One clear loser will be governments, which will no longer be able to interfere. For example, in the UK, the government forces colleges to require lower entrance qualifications from applicants from socially disadvantaged areas. A barely disguised attempt at social engineering. Private e-universities will not entertain such meddling. To succeed there, students need to be simply the best, better than all the rest, with no exception. The future starts here. How many universities and e-universities will there be in 2 decades' time? Not that many. The internet always reduces the number of competitors in every business sector. And have no doubts, education is now a business with its own new set of agendas. New agendas in education. The more things change, the more they stay the same.